Imagine stepping into a world with no maps, no signs, no roads, no directions. No one can tell you you're going the wrong way. So let me ask you something simple but dangerous. Before maps existed, how did humans find their way? Before we continue, subscribe to the channel for cinematic, curiosity-driven stories about the forgotten struggles that shaped humanity. Now, let's go back. Long before the first map was ever drawn, humans were already moving. They didn't stay in one place. They followed animals. They searched for water. They escaped danger. And every step into the unknown was a risk. One wrong turn could mean starvation. One missed path could mean death. There were no lines on paper, no arrows pointing home. Only the land. Early humans lived in a world that was wild, open, and unforgiving. Dense forests, endless plains, mountains that blocked the sky. And yet, they traveled across all of it. Not because they were fearless, but because they had to. The first way humans found direction was by remembering. They remembered where the sun rose. They remembered where water flowed. They remembered the shape of hills and the bend of rivers. Memory was their map. A tall tree wasn't just a tree, it was a marker. A strange rock formation wasn't decoration, it was a signal. If you see this, their minds told them, you're close. Paths were not drawn, they were walked. Over time, the land itself became familiar. Humans learned to read it. Soft grass meant animals had passed. Broken branches meant movement. Fresh footprints meant danger or opportunity. The ground spoke, and humans listened. But memory alone was not enough. Storms changed landscapes, floods erased paths. Darkness made everything unfamiliar. So humans began to depend on something higher, the sky. Every day, the sun followed a pattern. It rose, it moved, it fell, and humans noticed. Morning light meant east, evening glow meant west. Without knowing the words, they understood direction. At night, the sky offered even more. Stars didn't move like everything else. They stayed. One star always returned to the same place. Others formed patterns, shapes that humans slowly recognized. The sky became a guide. But this knowledge wasn't written down. It lived in people. Elders remembered routes, hunters remembered paths, survivors remembered mistakes. And they passed this knowledge forward through story. Follow the river until the stones turn white. Do not cross the valley when the shadows grow long. Not maps, but memories turned into warnings. Still, finding the way was never easy. People got lost, people disappeared, and every loss taught the group something new. Because in a world without maps, learning the land was the difference between life and death. When memory was not enough, humans learned to look beyond the ground. You saw how early humans used landmarks, trees, rocks, rivers, to remember their way. But the world did not stay still. Floods erased paths. Storms changed the land. Forests burned. Snow covered familiar ground. So humans needed guides that never moved. They looked up. The sun became their first reliable direction. Every morning, it rose from the same side of the world. Every evening, it fell on the opposite side. Without knowing words like east or west, humans understood rhythm. Morning light meant one direction, evening glow meant another. Travel slowly began to follow the sky. If you walked with the rising sun on your left, you knew which way you were going. At night, the sky offered even more. Stars did not behave like animals or weather. They returned again and again to the same places. One star stood almost still while others moved around it. Humans noticed. They didn't name it yet, but they trusted it. That star became a silent guide. When everything on Earth changed, the sky remained familiar. Groups traveling long distances began to time their movement by the stars. They walked when the stars were high, they rested when they shifted. The sky became a map written in light. But direction was not only above. The Earth itself gave clues, if you knew how to read it. Humans watched the wind. They noticed how certain winds brought rain, others brought cold. Some carried the smell of water or animals. Wind direction helped humans predict where life existed. They followed birds. Birds always knew where water was. They always returned to safe places. If birds flew in one direction repeatedly, humans followed. They read plants too. Green growth meant water below. Dry soil meant danger. The Earth spoke in signs, and humans slowly learned its language. Still, this knowledge was fragile. If a group lost its elders, it lost its directions. So humans did something powerful. They began to teach navigation through story. Not maps, but memory turned into words and gestures. Follow the river until the stones turn red. Do not cross the valley when shadows grow long. These were not instructions written down. They were lessons passed from mouth to ear. Children learned routes before they ever walked them. Navigation became culture. But as humans traveled farther, across deserts, seas, and mountains, nature alone was not enough. The distances were too large, the dangers too great. Something new was needed, something humans could carry with them. As humans traveled farther from familiar land, something became clear. Memory was powerful, but memory could fail. You saw how humans learned to read the sky and the land, following the sun, trusting the stars, watching birds and wind. But journeys were growing longer. Groups were splitting apart. New territories were being explored. And the farther humans went, the easier it was to get lost. One storm could hide the stars. One flood could erase paths. One mistake could mean never returning. So humans needed a way to remember even when they were gone. That's when something remarkable happened. Humans began to leave marks. Not words, not pictures. Marks. A branch broken and placed across a path. Stones stacked where they didn't belong. Scratches carved into tree bark or rock. These were not accidents. They were messages. This way is safe. Danger lies ahead. We have passed through here. For the first time, humans could communicate with people who were not present, with people who hadn't arrived yet. The land itself became a memory. Hunters marked routes they had survived. Travelers marked water sources they had found. Groups marked paths that led home. Each mark was simple, but together they formed something powerful, a shared understanding of space. This was the beginning of navigation beyond memory. Over time, these marks became more deliberate. Stones were arranged in specific patterns. Carvings became clearer. Certain symbols meant the same thing to everyone in the group. Not language yet, but meaning. Children learned these signs before they ever traveled far. They learned which marks meant safety and which meant death. Navigation became a skill passed down through generations. But marks alone were not enough. They could be destroyed. They could be misunderstood. They could be forgotten. So humans did something even more important. They began to tell stories about places. Not stories for entertainment, but for survival. Beyond the red stones, the ground collapses. When the river bends twice, turn toward the tall hill. Do not walk when the shadows grow long. These stories were maps carried in the mind, spoken again and again around the fire, repeated until they became unforgettable. Navigation became part of culture. Elders were no longer just leaders, they were living maps. If an elder died without passing on their knowledge, entire routes were lost. That loss taught humans another lesson. Knowledge must be shared, or it disappears. And so humans refined their navigation stories. They simplified them. They structured them. Landmarks became characters. Paths became sequences. Journeys became narratives. By turning routes into stories, humans ensured they would survive. And slowly, without realizing it, they were creating the earliest form of maps. Not on paper, not in drawings. For thousands of years, humans carried the world in their minds. You saw how marks, stories, and symbols helped people remember paths and survive long journeys. But memory, even when shared, still had limits. Stories changed with time, details were forgotten, routes became confused. As humans traveled farther than ever before, they needed something stronger than memory. They needed to see the journey. So humans began to draw. Not for beauty, not for art, but for survival. At first, these drawings were simple. Lines scratched into dirt, shapes carved into stone, marks drawn on cave walls, a line for a river, a circle for a hill, a mark for danger. These were not pictures of places, they were ideas of places. For the first time, humans tried to show the land from above as if they were looking down on the world. This was a new way of thinking. Instead of walking the land, they imagined it. Instead of remembering a path, they represented it. These early maps were rough, incomplete, and personal, but they worked. A hunter could show another hunter where animals gathered. A traveler could explain a safe route without walking it again. A group could plan before moving. Navigation was no longer only experience, it became knowledge. As generations passed, these drawings became clearer. Symbols grew more consistent. Certain shapes always meant water. Others meant mountains or danger. Different groups developed different mapping styles, but the idea was the same everywhere. The land could be translated. This changed how humans moved. Journeys became longer, migration became safer, exploration expanded. Humans crossed deserts, they followed coastlines, they reached lands no one had ever seen. And all of it began with simple marks. But maps did more than guide movement. They changed how humans understood the world. For the first time, people saw themselves as part of something larger, not just a path, but a place within a whole landscape. This way of thinking led to borders, territories, homes. Maps helped create villages. Villages became cities. Cities became civilizations. And eventually, maps moved from dirt and stone to bark, cloth, and paper. They became more accurate, more detailed, more powerful. But even the most advanced map today still carries the same purpose as those first scratches in the earth, to answer one question: how do we find our way? Before maps, humans used memory, then the sky, then marks, then stories. Maps were not invented suddenly. They were built step by step by people who refused to be lost. So the next time you open a map on your phone, remember this: you were using an idea that began tens of thousands of years ago, when a human knelt down, drew a line in the dirt, and said, without words, "This is the way."